fish like Jesus did. Have you ever had that one?
Yeah.
The idea is Jesus is our role model. If Jesus ate fish, we can eat fish. There's only one place in all of the Bible that implies that Jesus may have eaten a fish. I'm going to give you two arguments. Maybe more. But I'm going to say if he did, there was a reason for it, and we can explain it. And it doesn't give approval to non-stop eating of fish. And the other one is maybe he just didn't. When did he do it? We're dealing with just after the crucifixion. Jesus was just crucified and died. Okay, let's see the apostles. They're hanging out in a room, in a locked room. Why are they in a locked room? In John chapter 20, verse 19, they locked the doors because they were afraid. Why were they afraid? These guys were Jesus' right-hand man, and everybody knew it. They just crucified and killed Jesus. Jesus was dead and buried in his grave. They thought, the disciples thought, we're next. They're going to come after us. So they're hiding away in a room. They don't have much food. They're just living on whatever they could scrounge up. And they're hiding in there. Got it? Do you understand the context of the situation now? So then, all of a sudden, in the locked room, Jesus appears. I love it. Okay, I'll read the verse to you. Verse 36. And as they speak, Jesus stood in the midst of them. He just appeared, but they were terrified and afraid because they think they're seeing a ghost. The disciples did not understand that Jesus was going to die. They didn't know it. We all know it because we're looking back thousands of years. They were in the moment. They didn't know that Jesus was going to raise from the dead. They didn't also know that he was going to raise the dead bodily. You see, God is a spirit, and they thought maybe Jesus was coming back as a spirit, a ghost. And Jesus, trying to talk them out of it, says, look at my hands. Look at my feet. You can touch me. See the holes? I am flesh and blood, just like you guys are. But they still didn't believe it. They still thought he was a ghost. So Jesus did what he could do. He said, get a PKE meter and use it on. I'm kidding, that's a Ghostbuster thing. All right. You guys were all just sitting there looking so serious. I'm like, come on. All right. Jesus just appeared in a locked room. And he's like, okay, he knew that flesh and blood eats food. So Jesus is like, what have you got to eat? He didn't say, hey, is that some fish? Can I have some? He just said, what have you got to eat? They looked up to it and they said, well, we got some fish and some honeycomb. That's in verse 42. And Jesus then said, again, like I said, he didn't ask for fish. He didn't ask for that. He just said, what have you got to eat? Because he's going to eat it to prove he's flesh and blood and not a ghost. All right, that's the key to all this. Okay, so his goal in eating whatever they gave him was just to prove who he was. Now, they could have gave him a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It would have proved the same thing, that he's not a ghost. So think about the context. He's not giving approval for fish. He's not laying down a formula for all time that fish is to be eaten. He's just eating what was ever available to make the point. And if you've just been crucified, okay, eat a fish. None of us are doing that, so I don't think that gives us approval to eat a fish. But then being vegans, we got to deal with that part about...
So basically, this is the island.
Island?
Yeah, you know the island argument?
Okay, yeah, like...
What would you do on an island?
If you're on an island stranded and there's nothing to eat...
And your disciples say, hey, prove that you're... Like,
yeah, so Jesus just he didn't bring fish. This is the same Jesus that spent 40 days and 40 nights out in the mountains. Do you remember that story?
Yeah.
And he didn't eat a single thing. And Satan says, or why don't you turn the stones to bread? Do you remember that? Which is really wonderful because even Satan is on the vegan side because Jesus was surrounded by the animals in that verse. And he didn't say eat some of the animals. He said turn the stones to bread. So the Satan was giving us a vegan win on that one.
Mm.
Go Satan. I'm telling you. Can I hear an amen for Satan?
Amen.
So that's that. But now we got to deal with that nasty part about honey's not vegan either. But could it be a little bit ethical, at least back then? I often make the argument that what they lived then is so different from what we live now. Majority of them were poor. The reason fish is always so predominant is because that they could get for free. So yeah, if you are stranded on that desert island, you're going to eat whatever you have to eat, and that is vegan.
Context.
Yeah, so here these poor people, they didn't own land, so they couldn't grow their own food. They couldn't raise their own anything. They could go to the ocean, the Sea of Galilee, which is free. Whatever they caught, they could eat. Do you see why they were doing it? It's kind of like that vegan being stuck on the desert island. It's not approval, but it's saying in a bad situation, if it's them or you, obviously you're going to pick you. But what about the honey part? What if Jesus ate the honey? He still would have proved it, that he was flesh and blood. And if you remember the verse says he took it and ate it. It doesn't say he took the fish or the honeycomb. It could have been either. It says he took it. We don't know that he took the fish. But if he did take the honeycomb, how did they get honeycomb back in the first century Palestine? Well, there weren't beekeepers and things like that. These poor people, again, they didn't have the facilities to try and, take bees' honey and give them sugar water replacement like we do today. They would take a bowl, a piece of wood. They'd find a beehive up in cave somewhere or in a tree branch. They'd put the bowl underneath whatever dripped out. That's their honey. Honey is nutritious, even though it's bee honey. It's still got nutrition in it. And if you're poor, that might be all you can afford. So if Jesus ate that, is it vegan? Not really, but is it a bad thing? Can you see the context now where, at least it gives us a little bit of wiggle room on what we want to criticize Jesus for doing at that moment. So at that point, we got them, Jesus saying that Jesus took it and ate it. What else could possibly be it? The third it would be, let's use a typical meat eater's dinner plate. If a carnist is eating dinner, it's steak, potatoes, and some green beans on the side, right? Well, if they handed him, if they said, here, we got some fish and honeycomb, here's a plate. Well, what if there was mashed potato? What do you mean Jesus ate the mashed potatoes? The thing is, from the verse is written, we don't know for sure if he did actually take the fish, the honeycomb, or if there even was more things on the plate. So there's several ways we can go with that. But don't let the carnist Christian convince you that Jesus ate fish, so we do. Plus, the other side of the coin is Jesus, if he was offered a fish today, he would never eat it because it violates the law of Sar Ba'alei Chaim, correct? That means to do the least amount of harm to an animal. If you're going to eat the animal, there were laws. God gave us laws on what to do. If you're going to do it, it has to be done with the least amount of harm. No fish, no cow, no chicken, no duck, anything in a factory farm is done with the least amount of harm. That makes it all unpermissible. It could be killed kosher, but that doesn't mean it's permissible to eat. As I said, yeah. He wasn't laying down a formula for all time. It was a one-time situation. He was just crucified.
He didn't say go into the bank and throw the tables up in the air.
No.
Because I did it.
There's a lot of things Jesus did that we don't do, and it doesn't. Jesus, when he healed somebody at one point, he said, now go back and do all the things that Moses told you to do. In other words, if Moses told you to make a sacrifice, Jesus was saying make a sacrifice. Wow. That's kind of a troublesome one.
So
we got another.
I don't want to interrupt too much, but I think eventually, if Jesus, in his time, he was basically a Jewish rabbi, he didn't see himself as a Christian or Jesus. He wouldn't know, if you call him Jesus, he wouldn't know who you're calling.
No.
But he was just Rabbi Yoshua, and I think that if Judaism says that Tzar Ba'alei Chaim is illegal to consume, right off the bat, it's there. He would not make something that is illegal by his own religion legal all of a sudden. So right off the bat, no one can argue anything because it is illegal according to his Bible and his religion.
If I had the time, I would have gone into a whole 20, 30 minutes on Tzar Ba'alei Chaim and the law. That is so important to understanding all those terror texts that we hear in the Bible about God saying you could eat animals and things like that.